Hey everybody, happy Friday. Hope you guys had a great week. I know it was a short one. Um, Wanted to hop on this week and talk a little bit more. A little bit about me. My name is Dr. T.A.S.T.E Haynes. I'm board certified in family medicine and obesity medicine. I'm also the founder and CEO of Family First Health Center, where I'm coming at you live now from, which is the first direct primary care practice in Volusia and Flagler counties. And all of our patients get same or next day appointments, longer one-on-one time with doctor, and virtual visits for a flat monthly fee without any copays or insurance hassles. The reason that I've been coming on live to share is really because of another passion of mine, which is about mental health, and specifically about helping medical students overcome stress and depression so they can maximize their full potential and really reach their full potential. I've always wanted to be either a doctor, a teacher, or a lawyer, and I found out if I became a doctor, I could do all three. And so I enjoy teaching medical students and really enjoy, seeing them thrive and watching. It's been amazing seeing so many medical students who are now my colleagues. It's been amazing, and it's a little weird too, but. So that's the reason that I'm really coming on here, and I'm happy to just share some of the things that have helped me, because I was a student that suffered with depression and took some time off in medical school to be treated. It was an experience that made me a much better doctor, a better person, but it's also one of those things that we in medicine, we don't always talk about and we don't always share. And so I want to make sure that not just my students, but everyone kind of knows what some of the risk factors for depression are, and some of the things that you can do to support yourself, so that if that's been your history, it doesn't have to become your future. And lately we've been talking about ways that you can kind of support your mood. So one of my patients called it Dr. Delicia's sensual treatment of depression, because we're using the five senses. And I just think of it as ways to kind of support yourself and support your mood. And it's part of the things that I do on a daily basis. So to kind of recap what we've been talking about, we talked about touch, so how things kind of feel against your skin, and also the importance of staying in touch with people who bring you joy, who fill you up, people that you just really enjoy being around. We talked about smell, and that smell is that nice automatic, can take you back to a beautiful memory, a beautiful place in childhood. And I shared with you that for me, cherry chapstick is one of those smells that can take me back. And after I shared that, I was with someone, and my lips were a little chapped, and I just took out some cherry chapstick, and they're like, "You're cherry chapsticking me." And I was like, "No, I just really needed to, just do some moisturize." But it works for me. So finding something that works for you, that can be that kind of that quick pick you up, or that just helps you, not slide any further if you feel like your mood is kind of wavering. We talked about sight, so the importance of having things in your visual field that make you, feel better. Sight is really important, and I keep pictures of my family around me at all times, because they lift me up, they make me feel, really good. And I actually, it just saw an email kind of pop up from somebody that I had been concerned about. So that was a really good sight that I just got a few seconds ago. So thank you for reaching out. We talked about hearing. So, who's in your ear, who's talking to you, and that when someone is going through depression, those negative thoughts get really, really loud. And so we have to really pump up the positive and making sure we're drowning out the negative with positive, positive sounds, which means that those sounds may not be your own voice, because, when someone's going through depression, their own voice is pretty negative. So finding those external things. And I was sharing some of mine, and thank you, those of you who kind of shared some of your songs. I checked some of those out, and so now I have a few more in my arsenal. And then today I was going to talk about taste, which that's that sense that gets me in trouble, but it's an important one as well. But before I did that, I want to talk about kind of what depression is, and kind of some of the signs and symptoms of it. So that, we always are talking about that too. I mentioned the Beck's Depression Inventory in the past. It's a survey that you can take. It's 21 questions, and it you just you circle them, and then afterwards you add them all up, and it kind of gives you a score of where you stand. And I really like it, because it's very easy to do. It's easy to understand, and then it's something that you can track. And that's really how I use it, is for also, that initial kind of knowing what's going on, but just as important as that tracking. So it's something that I do for myself. It's something that I recommend for patients. It's something that we always have here in the clinic. So when I'm giving out, blood pressure logs and blood glucose logs, I'm also handing out these, depression inventories so that people can be tracking that as well, because it's important to track things, and to know kind of where you stand and where you're going. One of the things that medical students always love to use when they're studying is mnemonics, and there is a mnemonic that we all learned for depression. It's called SIG-E caps, and so when a physician writes a prescription, they write SIG, S-I-G, which basically it means directions. And then E-caps, the E is like for energy. So it's like with energy caps is how that mnemonic kind of came to be, because typically people who are depressed, the lack of energy and fatigue is one of the most predominant signs of it. So that's one of the ways that we have come up with remembering the signs and symptoms of depression. But knowing that doesn't make you immune to that. When I was a second-year medical student, I knew SIG-E caps cold, but it didn't make me immune. And neither does putting on a white coat doesn't make you immune to anything. But it's really important to know those signs. So I wanted to go over those really quick. So the S, it stands for sleep. So sleep changes. People who have depression may notice that they're sleeping more, typically like sleeping more in the daytime, maybe not going to sleep at night, but really those sleep changes. The I stands for interest, so loss of interest in things that pleasure you, also known as anhedonia. So that's one of the things with depression. The G stands for guilt, which also can go along with feelings of worthlessness. And we see that a lot. We also see that a lot, particularly in some of our elderly will, tend to devalue themselves. Energy we mentioned, so lack of energy is really what brings most people to clinical attention, is that they just have no energy. They're tired all the time, despite sleeping. The C stands for cognition, so difficulty concentrating, difficulty, hard reading. The A is for appetite, so usually it's kind of a loss of appetite, but it also can be that you are eating a little bit more, really those changes in appetite. The P in SIG-E caps is for, it's for psychomotor is what it stands for, and which can either be agitation, so being more anxious, or it can be what's called retardation, which is more lethargic, more fatigued. And the S, which is stands for suicide. So having more preoccupation with death and thoughts of committing suicide or with death in general. So that's the mnemonic for SIG-E caps. And it's important also that, so when someone is clinically depressed, it's not something that just happened one day. Depression is not having a bad day or just being in a bad mood. It's having, a lot of those symptoms for most of the day for 2 weeks. So it's not just, something happened this one day or this other day. It's been going on for quite some time. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that before we kind of got back into kind of treating with the five senses. And I mentioned that, so taste is always the one that has kind of gotten me in trouble as far as, the senses that you have to be careful how you support them, because when someone's depressed, no one reaches for like celery when they're stressed, because it doesn't do anything for you. What people would tend to reach for are going to be things that are like simple carbohydrates, kind of quick sources of energy, because when you think about your body and how it deals with stress and being in that kind of fight or flight mentality, it knows that it needs access to quick energy. And so quick energy is your simple carbohydrates. So I don't know about you, but I know that I can sometimes be an emotional eater. So, there are times when I've needed like a hug, and I have instead had a milkshake and fries. And so, kind of paying attention to, kind of why you're eating and understanding that doesn't make it any easier, but it does give you a little bit more insight into what's going on with you. So when it comes to, to taste, I remember Charles Stanley, he said, a preacher who I used to listen to when I was in medical school. And so I talked about like, hearing and what's in your ear. Every single day, I was listening to him, which was really helpful in getting me through, medical school and with my senses and everything intact. And one of his sermons, he talked about HALT, another mnemonic, which was basically never let yourself get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And I try when I'm about to make a decision to make sure that I'm not in any one of those categories, because we tend to make worse decisions when we're in those. So when it comes to taste, again, when you are dealing with depression, you are going to be drawn to more foods that are going to give you quick sources of energy, which may not be the foods that are going to be really good for you. So, I shared with you kind of like all of these, drinks and things that if you were to just look at this, no one would just instantly go up and, pick up a bunch of sugar and just down it. But when it's presented in a different form, sometimes you will. And when you're dealing with depression, sometimes you make, some of these kind of more poor choices because they are sources of quick energy, and it's what your body is going to be drawn to. So when it comes to depression, your environment is really important. So what do you have around you? What do you have access to? So I have to make sure that there are no Reese's Cups or gummy bears in around me if my mood is getting low, because I know that's my kryptonite. And so looking around your house and making sure that you don't have things that are right around you that are going to derail you. So these are just some some example of some things, but it's easy to let your emotions kind of take you down a road that you really don't want to go down. And that's something I talk a lot on a daily basis, because I mentioned I'm board certified in obesity medicine as well as family medicine, so I do that as well. And that emotional eating component is probably the harder one to control. But really making sure that your environment is helping you. So you'll see me a lot. I go down to Kale Cafe, is one of my favorite restaurants. It's a Jamaican-inspired vegan restaurant, and I'm not vegan, so I don't want to mislead anyone. I do eat a lot of vegetables. I don't eat a lot of meat, but it's just really, really tasty food, and I do think that you should enjoy your calories that you're consuming, but making sure that you are really enjoying it and that you're choosing things that are really nutritious for you. And I believe in enjoying food, and I went on a wine tasting once, and I ended up sitting next to a guy who was a sommelier. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And he was very annoying to sit next to, because he was sipping and slurping and swashing this wine, and we were jam-packed, so he was like right next to me and spitting on me, and that part was not enjoyable at all. But what was impressive is that he was able, just by drinking, his palate was so defined that he was able to say things like where in the world the grape was from and whether the soil was acidic, and he was right every single time. And I don't know if it was a setup, I don't know, but I was impressed that his palate was that defined that he could do that. And I thought about, when we're eating, how often do we really kind of let things kind of go around our mouth and hit all of our taste buds and enjoy it? So we know that, that sweet taste is on the tip of your tongue. We know that the sour taste is kind of the sides, that bitter taste is in the back. So those people who love like dark coffee, that's that bitter in the back that they like. People who like that sweet wine, it's that sweet, that fruit forward part that they like. But how often do you eat something and you take the time to really let it kind of go and hit all of your taste buds and, taste, is that nutmeg in there? What is it? And really enjoy the oral phase of eating, versus just kind of gobbling and getting it down and not even enjoying the food that you're having. Because it takes about 20 minutes for, those enzymes or those basically the transmitters in your stomach to go to your brain and tell your brain that you're full. And in that time, you could have put down a lot of calories that you maybe didn't even enjoy having. So, I'm a believer in eating well. I'm a believer in enjoying the food that you're eating. And, part of that enjoyment is really enjoying that oral phase and really kind of letting the food kind of hit every part of your taste bud. And when you are depressed, making sure that you're surrounded with good choices that are going to be nutritious for you, because food is fuel, and we want to make sure that you're fueled for your day and that you've got fuel that's going to help with your brain and with your mental clarity and all of that. Just wanted to hop on a little bit and talk about that. I would love, those of you who are in the Daytona Beach area, I'd love to meet you in person if we have a chance. I am going to be speaking coming up, September 19th at 9 at Cinematique for 1 Million Cups. And that's open to the public. And then again, for my physician colleagues and friends, I'll be doing Grand Rounds September 21st at 7:30 at Halifax Hospital. So if you're in town, I'll be talking more about direct primary care, but I think that, I'd be happy to talk about any of the things that we've been talking about, and I hope that this has helped you and lifted you up some. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see y'all later. Dr. Alicia signing off.